Welcome to the All Things Nintendo podcast. I'm Brian Shea from Game Informer, and this is a weekly podcast to discuss all the biggest news and games from the world of Nintendo. We're going to play catch-up on a bit of news this episode. Then, on the other side of the break, I'm going to give my hands-on preview of Super Monkey Ball Banana Rumble and my full, spoiler-free thoughts of the Knuckles Paramount Plus streaming series. And then my guest is going to give her review of Another Crab's Treasure. And joining me for all of that today is former editor at Game Informer and an absolute delight of a human being. She is the founder and editor-in-chief of the Indie Informer. She's Jill Grodt. Jill, how are you?
I'm doing well, especially after that glorious intro. Thank you so much.
Yeah, well, thank you for joining me. I mean, what is this, your fifth appearance on All Things Nintendo? Like, you're a regular at this point, I feel like.
Every time something indie happens, I know I'm getting that, ring of my phone, what's going on?
Well, you're the indie guru. I mean, that was kind of your reputation that you developed while at Game Informer.
Yes.
And that obviously has continued and even blossomed further because of your work at the Indie Informer.
Yeah, 100%.
And, that's exactly why we're here, because since I was traveling last week, we missed out on last week's Indie World Showcase on this podcast. So we're not going to start this week's show with listener questions the way that I have since taking the show independent. But please keep sending them in, as I have absolutely loved answering those questions prior to bringing my guest on most weeks. On that front, as a reminder, if you want to get any questions, comments, or topic suggestions in, you can get in touch with me through the free All Things Nintendo Patreon page or by emailing me, brian@allthingsnintendo.com. So, Jill, as you know, anytime we have you on the show, we're probably going to be talking that indie news, that sweet indie action. And as I mentioned, we have some catching up to do on that front.
Mm-hmm.
But before we jump into that news, how's everything going on the Indie Informer?
Oh, it's going so well. It's well to the point of I am very busy. And that's for
thing.
me personally, it's a great problem to have. It's hard when you're people are reaching out to you and they want you to cover stuff. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm just one person. I can't handle this. But I do have one news editor that people might recognize from former Informer. That's one John Carson, who is lovely and amazing. So I do have a little bit of help, which is always fun. A review just went up, like you mentioned, sort of in the intro, for Another Crab's Treasure. I had another review go up yesterday for non-Nintendo game, so I don't know if I should shout it out here.
Shout it out.
It's called Sucker for Love, Date to Die For, and you should look at what this looks like, and I promise you it's not exactly that, but it is a sort of Doki Doki situation.
Okay.
Yeah. We're gonna get into it's gonna be the first 10 minutes of the show, and I'm gonna sell you on another game. By the end of this, you're gonna have at least, let me say, 3 games in your wish list.
Oh God, you do this every time you come on the show.
Yeah, I know, it's so bad.
Because you have your finger on the pulse of the indie world in ways that I just simply can't, because we're so busy.
You have to be keeping up with everything mainstream. Yeah, it's the same. I've noticed the same thing. When I was a Game Informer, I was the Indie Informer. That's where the name from my website has come from. But having now the time and ability to solely focus on indie games, I'm swimming. I'm swimming into depths that people don't even know. And I forget that. So when I'm talking to people, even in the gaming space, I just drop names of games. I've never heard that before in my life. I'm like, well, let me tell you about it. So I have this kind of walking hazard sign around me now that you might accidentally get 10 more things to have to play with.
Well, thankfully, a lot of indie games are, 1, shorter, and 2, cheaper. So that's the silver lining to this whole situation. We actually do have one listener question that I wanted to do while you were here. So we'll start with that before we jump into the Indie World Showcase news. This comes from Cody Gibson over on Patreon. They say, this has been another great year for RPGs so far, with games such as Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. I started Dragon's Dogma 2 and was playing Unicorn Overlord only in short increments. Now I'm hooked. What's a game that just surprised you with how much it really hooked you and tore attention away from other games?
As far like RPGs are
Just
concerned,
any game, any
any
game
game
that
in particular.
surprised you. You're like, okay, well that looks like fun, and then like you start up and you're like, oh god, this is my life now.
I'm no joke. It's almost every game that I play because I usually only reach out for the things I'm super interested in because I don't have enough time. But like just this week, I mentioned Sucker for Love. Did not expect to go down the rabbit hole so hard. Also, Manor Lords is I believe in early access today or tomorrow. And the embargo to talk about it is up, so I'm fine. But like, I didn't expect to get sucked in so bad to that because it is a medieval game, which I'm always down for.
Mm-hmm.
It is a building game which has really fun interconnected building mechanics, and you can kind of watch your village grow and like care about people, and they're all little named people, and you'd be like, oh look, Agatha's out and doing her best at egg catching today, or what. Egg catching, I don't know
Egg
what you do with
catching.
eggs. um and like, oh yeah, I can finally make sure Martha has a vegetable garden, and so like I get really invested in the personal lives of my little people. But then there's like a kind of macro level risk like situation where I'm supposed to be building up my power and influence and money in order to take over or defend neighboring realms. So I'm like, I'm over here just caring about like collecting eggs. Like, give me a moment because already people are starting to invade. I'm like, no, I can't have this happen. So I literally thought I was just going to jump in. I mean, it was tough because I knew it was going to be bad when the scene for like making it's not like a character creator, but you get to make your own little banner,
Mm-hmm.
like coat of arms situation. I'm like, I spent way more time on that than I should have. I was going through each and every permutation. I was moving things around. I was changing colors. I'm like, how close can I get to the Indian Former logo?
I've done that before with like
Yeah.
when I was running my own independent site back before I joined Game Informer. Like I think like Rockstar had something for like it was either GTA Online or like Red Dead Redemption. I think it was GTA
Mhm.
Online or something. It was one of their games, and I created like a group for like all the people that were writing for my website and made that logo as close to the actual logo as
Uh-huh.
possible. And it's always fun. It's got to represent your crew.
Yeah. And so it lets you do that. It's a lot of fun. It's one of those like, I'm just going to play this for 5 minutes, but really you're past midnight when you finally look up. So yeah, go check that out because that's a lot of fun.
Yeah, so for my recently, it's been a combination of an indie game and a very not indie game. So I've recently fallen victim to the Balatro craze.
Yes, I heard you say that. I'm like, it has to be Balatro, right?
Yes, so that's one
Oh,
of them. And, I finally got my first successful run. I mean, it didn't take me that long. Like, it took me a lot longer to get a successful run in Vampire Survivors than it
yeah.
did Balatro. I got all the way to the end of a run and I beat the boss and then switched over to like endless mode and went a couple more rounds before I was
Hmm.
exodus. I was shown the door, and so that's been a great time. Like, oh my god, people were not joking about how much fun that game is. Um, and the other one has been MLB The Show.
Okay.
I Sports games for me are very hit or miss. Like when they come out, it's usually dependent upon if I have the time. But MLB The Show came out, and I reviewed last year's game, and this year's game I did not review because we ended up freelancing it out, and it's a really good game. Like it's just like they have really good mechanics. I mean, MLB The Show has always been like one that has like the most consistency, I think, year over year in terms of its offerings. But they also do a great job with these storylines that showcase like I mean, I think both years that they've done it, it's been showcasing the Negro Leagues and kind of like shining a light on this just criminally overlooked portion of baseball history.
Right.
And they've done a really great job like doing that. And then they have another one that's a little less compelling to me. It's a Derek Jeter thing, like celebrating his career, which, I grew up watching Derek Jeter and kind of hating Derek Jeter because I'm an Orioles fan, and he is a lifelong Yankee. So, but I respect him as an amazing player. So that's kind of cool. But like, just the core gameplay has been awesome. I love playing March to October, where you just take your team and they add like storylines around like the actual game. So like, it's like, oh well, they're on a losing streak, and like, they'll actually like reference the context of the season like
Mm-hmm.
through the commentary, which is really cool. And then like it's not playing every single game; it's just playing like the games that like matter and like the moments that matter, which is really neat. So that has stolen several of my evenings in recent weeks. And then Balatro, just like
Yeah.
I recently was on a trip to New York, and I even tweeted this out that like somebody like the flight attendant
Yeah,
signaled to
yeah.
me and like to take off my headphones. I'm like, what did I do? Like what's happening? Because he's just like collecting the trash after like they gave out the drinks and everything. And he's like, I am obsessed with that game right now. And I'm like, a flight attendant hasn't like said something like that to me since somebody saw me playing Tears of the Kingdom. So like that's how
Right.
big like Balatro has gotten, where like people out in like real life, not just like the people on Twitter who are like the diehard gamers, like people out in the real world are like recognizing it and being like,
Right.
oh my God, that's my jam.
That's
So
so fun too, because like for that person to be that excited, I wonder how much they get to talk about games in their daily life. I think about that a lot because I used to be in like a work situation where people didn't play games around me. So it's always fun to be able to talk about games, and like everyone who is anywhere near you knows exactly what you're talking about. I absolutely love that. And I wonder too how much these games that we love kind of jumping into every night and kind of dealing with, I wonder how much that is affected by the fact that we haven't reviewed them.
yeah, I mean, that is true. I mean, but then again, like somebody like Marcus Stewart, he reviewed Balatro for us
Oh my
and
gosh.
gave it a 9.5, and it's just like,
Hmm.
oh my God, it's the greatest game. And I think he's still playing it sometimes. So like, I think, I mean, Alex Van Aken might have been the first one on our staff to get tuned into like the Balatro craze, and then like we all got it, and then we're all like, oh no, this is amazing. I was
This
late
is,
to the
yeah.
party because I've been like doing a cover story, I've been reviewing other stuff, and then like taking this show independent, speaking of indies. And yeah, it's been a busy stretch for me, so I'm finally getting a chance to catch up on some of those games that I've been meaning to play. And yeah, I'm reviewing another game right now that's not Nintendo. It's another sports game though. It's a Top Spin. I was in a past life, I was a tennis player and briefly a tennis instructor. So I'm enjoying jumping back into that world, even though it's been a good like 15 years since I've played any kind of tennis in real life. Which is fair because it's also been like 14 years since we've gotten a Topspin game. So there we go. It all comes full circle. The Topspin's trajectory has mirrored my own with the game of tennis.
Your fates are intertwined.
Apparently, yes. So, Jill, let's jump in to the news here. Indie World Showcase from Nintendo. Still no proper Nintendo Direct in
Yeah.
2024, but we got this last week, and we got a bunch of new trailers and information about some of the most anticipated indie games on the horizon. Before we start, though, were you among the masses that were doing summoning circles for Hollow Knight
No.
Silksong?
No.
No.
In my communities, I don't even say the name of that game, and I refuse to have people say it because it's gonna happen at some point. It's not gonna happen at any point where you expect it. That's my that's my bet. Like something, it's just gonna like be in your hand at one point, and I'm not even gonna trust it then. I could be playing it and I'll be like, I don't trust that it's coming out, you know? Um,
Is that the most anticipated indie game right now?
I think it's the most memely anticipated game. I think that is something that people like. I think that is a fun thing for people to come in and say, "We want Silk Song." I don't know how many of these people actually want Silk Song. I think they just know it is the thing to say when you're going into an indie showcase, and I'm fine with that. Like that's a fun little in joke for the indie scene. It makes sure that that game is getting attention. That's great. Um, But yeah, I don't know if anyone honestly expected the the Silk Song announcement to come during this particular showcase. I think at this point it's going to have to be a pretty big. It's either going to be a huge showcase or platform or stage or something, or it's just going to appear, like one way or the other. But I don't think it's going to be at just an indie showcase at this point.
Do you think it shows up at the Summer Game Fest stream in June and it's just a shadow drop? Like it's available now? Like, is that how Jeff Keighley breaks the internet with this stream?
I mean, that is definitely a huge, like, if you're a betting person, that would be a good place to put your money. But again, I'm so shy about it coming out at all, ever, even though I know it's going to. So
if that's not the most anticipated indie game on the horizon, what is the overall most anticipated indie game on the horizon? I have an idea of one, but I want to hear you first.
what is the overall most anticipated? Here's the funny thing. For anybody who is in the indie scene, they have May 9th circled and starred and redlined for everything that is coming out that day. It is going to be wild. So let me actually look up everything that's
So I know
popping up.
Animal Well's one of them, which
Animal Well is definitely in
extremely
that.
hyped for that one.
Yeah. So it's Animal Well, Crow Country, Crypt
Oh, right.
Master, Little Kitty Big City, the Vampire Survivors DLC are all hitting that day.
There's
And
at least
then
3 there that I really want to play.
And then a couple of them have actually moved out because of the hype. So like we were getting in Indica, which I am
Yeah.
super into. Surmount moved, and they said they actually, in their reasoning for moving, explained they were moving away from May 9th because it was so popular. Like I love that sort of transparency, but also great move, great idea. And then when you see things, we're going to talk a little bit more about Little Kitty Big City, I imagine. But when you see things hit on that day and you're like, oh man, I got more I got to check out.
Well, it's like that week. I'm trying to look up what week it was last year. It was like mid-October. There was one week where it was like Sonic Superstars, Super Mario Brothers Wonder, Spider-Man 2, and Alan Wake 2.
Yeah.
It's like that was like the AAA like crater that like was going to just destroy the industry at that point. And ultimately Alan Wake 2 was the indica of that of that group because they moved out I think 2 weeks and they were like, this isn't because of development problems. We just wanted to get out of that
the
week.
way. Yeah.
And based on the sales of Sonic Superstars, I think they probably should have as well. Like, don't go head to head with a Mario game, like especially like a new 2D Mario game with so much hype. And then, Spider-Man 2 was kind of its own entity, no matter when that launched. I mean, unless it launched like the same day as like GTA 6, that game was going to do fine.
Yeah. I would love to be a fly on the wall when you see those people like, you obviously have this information ahead of time. You know that you're like aiming for this launch date, even though you haven't announced it officially. And then you're sitting there and you see something like an Indie World Showcase and you get all of these things dropping at the same day. And you're like, do we change? Do we stay? Like having to have that emergency meeting coming together and being like, okay, are we getting out of the way of Little Kitty Big City? What's going on?
I love that that's the name of the game that like people are like intimidated by. And also it's an amazing name in general. And that's what they started the showcase on. So let's talk about what was on the showcase, because it sure wasn't Hollow Knight.
No, it sure was not.
By the way, my answer for most anticipated indie game overall right now, I'm going to go Hades 2.
Oh, of course.
It's a known quantity. It's an established brand, and it has a lot of hype right now. I couldn't go with.
It's doing such a smart. I absolutely love the playtest the waves of letting people in situation that they are doing, because it is causing a sort of boom of excitement, because some people like yours truly are not allowed to get in.
Oh
Like, I
no.
keep checking my Steam, like, please just let me have the playtest. And of course, you're seeing people get in left and right, so their excitement is bubbling over, and everyone's really I'm like, this is such a genius way to do it. I'm gonna explore that topic a little more on a later podcast, but yeah, Hades 2, but it is not. The early access will be this year.
Mm-hmm.
Hades 2, the release itself will be 2025, if that.
Yeah.
So I don't want to pop a bubble or anything, but yeah.
So Little Kitty Big City.
Yeah.
I don't know what it was about this trailer. Like, I've been excited for this game for a while. So
Mhm.
basically, for those who aren't aware, like, you play a cat, and the cat like falls out of its house and gets lost in a city that is inspired by Japanese cities. And you basically have to like find your way through this city to
Mhm.
get home. And like, there's like things you can do. There's characters you can help out. There's characters you can hassle. Like, I didn't know that there was like kind of like some Untitled Goose Game antics
Yes,
present.
it is very much more Untitled Goose Game than say like a Stray.
Mm-hmm.
It is kitty cat mischief. Like, it's literally, it is so much fun. You have the ability to like pounce on birds. You don't hurt them, so no one panic about that. One of my favorite things in games in general is when you as the player say, I wonder if that would do anything. And then it does. And
Yeah.
it's not like the game's pushing you to do it or anything. So one of my favorite early memories was at one point you go into a backyard with like a painter, and he's painting on some kind of canvas, and has a lot of paint cans around, and you can knock over the paint cans, which I expected, but if you actually walk through the paint, your little footprints are like the paint color, so you can walk all over the canvas and like mess it up. And he's angry and freaking out the whole time. I'm like, this is a perfect 10 out of 10 game. I'm so down for this.
Yeah, I don't know what it was about the trailer, but it got me like a little emotional, and I don't know why. I think it's just like it just seems like such a wholesome, sweet game. And I don't know, it kind of made me tear up, I'm not gonna lie, like
Yeah,
watching the trailer. And
because it's like the personality of this cat comes through so well.
mhm,
You love it when like the first seconds of the game is seeing it fall from this high rise into possible death, and you suddenly like you're really connected to this thing, like, oh no, please don't let it get hurt. But also the game, while being very wholesome, is also very um absurd, and it loves that kind of absurd humor. So at certain points you're playing with the time continuum with like a Tenkuni, and you're like, what, why did this start happening? So there is a lot of fun to that game, and the developer created this game with his children as a sort of like, what would you guys like to play? And they're like, let's play as a cat. And that's sort of where it started. So you just sort of love that beginning, and the passion that creator has for what they're doing and how excited everything is. But yeah, when I heard the May 9th date, I was like, oh no, okay. That's another, I mean, I think part of it is that the rest of the list is a little bit more serious and a little more dark for the games that are releasing that day. So maybe they're hoping there's not too much crossover, and the
mhm,
audience for Little Kitty Big City is not the same for like Crow Country.
sure.
Um, but I'm excited for both, so
Yeah.
we'll see what happens.
So that game, like you said, May 9th. And again, all these games are coming to Switch, and I would say almost all of them, if not all of them, are on all other major platforms as well, if you prefer to play your games elsewhere, even though you're listening to a Nintendo podcast. So next up, Jill, Yars Rising, Unexpected. It's a
Yeah.
revival of the Yars series that started in 1982 with Yars Revenge, and it's by Way Forward,
Yep.
one of the goats right now. So Way Forward and Atari teaming up for what appears to be a 2D Metroidvania. Now, I saw this trailer. I like the art style. I think the character looks cool. The gameplay looks a little floaty,
Mhm.
but I mean, I say that as somebody who has not gotten their hands on it and also acknowledges the the prowess that Way Forward possesses. So like I'm kind of putting that concern to the side and kind of saying in Way Forward we trust.
Yeah.
But like, how are you feeling about this one?
Yeah, my feelings are weird because this triggered I mean, we had a lot of indie showcases that triggered the question of what counts as an indie.
Yeah.
And this one sort of did this as well. So it being a published by Atari is a question. Like it depends again on what your definition of indie is. But obviously Nintendo wants it to be in its indie showcase, so they are pushing it as an indie. And WayForward, of course, is an indie developer. Um, Atari is a whole different subject because it's gone through so much, and whether or not like it's a kind of ship of Theseus situation, like is it the same Atari that existed before? Like is it a major publisher at this point? Like I think that the game itself, I don't know. I'll probably see it at some point and make my decision from there. But as someone who runs a site that is dedicated 100% to indies, it becomes a really practical, like tangible problem for me because I
Yeah.
have to decide whether or not I can cover this game. And it's like, how do you not cover a game that's in an indie showcase? You know, like
Well,
it's a bizarre thing.
this goes back to so many debates that we've had at Game Informer
Hmm.
where even genres are sometimes up for debate. Like, okay, what is Dark Souls? Oh, it's
Yeah.
an RPG. But wait, is it an action game? And it's like, all right, well, which we want to give like Bloodborne an award for being one of the best games of the year. Do we say RPG of the year or do we say
Yeah.
action game of the year? And that was like a common constant debate that we had every single year, especially with like Souls likes games or Souls
Hmm.
games in general, where it's like, all right, what is Elden Ring? And it's Elden Ring, I think, was a little bit more in that RPG vein than like other ones, but like it's genres are tough, and especially since like RPG stuff has infiltrated almost every genre. Like
Right.
there were RPG elements in the Tomb Raider games in the reboot trilogy that they
Uh-huh,
did. So
uh-huh.
like, and same thing for like Assassin's Creed. All right, well, Assassin's Creed 2, that's an action game. But what about Assassin's Creed Odyssey when it's basically like an RPG? It's like, what? How do you classify these things? I think indies are kind of that same way where like there's purists who say like, no, if it has like a major publisher, it cannot be an indie game because,
Right.
by definition, it's not independent. While there's other people who are like, yeah, Dave the Diver, it's indie vibes. That's an
Yeah.
indie game. Like it's such a weird thing where it's like, I think the answer has to be somewhere in the middle there, right? Where it's like, all right, it's got to have vibes, but it's also like gotta have some degree of like independence. Like,
Yeah.
but at the same time, like a lot of major publishers have like quote unquote indie labels that are
Yes.
underneath them. So like Ubisoft has had that, EA has had that. Like it's such like a weird debate, and I'm glad that I don't have to like hinge my are we covering this
Uh-huh.
existential style question on that. But like for someone like you who does, like that is a
Yeah.
very
It is a
tough thing
very
to come to.
I think one of my favorite and to cut to the chase of that conversation is there's no answer. It is up to everybody. It is a gray thing. I think most people can agree on the criteria involved, but not the extent to which the criteria matter. But my favorite definition, and I'm going to go with this from forever, actually comes from the developer we're going to be talking about a lot, Aggro Crab. That's came out, I think, at the Dave the Diver situation, and they're like, an indie game is any game where the developer can wake up in the morning and just decide to put sex in it. And I was like, yeah, yeah, that's a pretty good definition.
Yeah. If nobody's there to tell them no, then yeah, sure, why not?
Yep.
Yeah, I like that. So that's coming out, Yars Rising, late 2024. Again, Switch and all major platforms. We have another one that I don't know a whole lot about, and I don't even, was this announced prior to this? It was Refined Self, the personality test game. So this one, I think, was the biggest surprise for me because I'm like, really, it's a game about like how to like giving you a personality test while you play
Mhm.
it. So tell me about this game.
I'm not hugely familiar with it, but it did come out on PC like some time ago. So
Okay.
I am interested in what that fan base looks like, but it's a personality test and a narrative adventure that looks at humanity and personality through the eyes of like an AI android sort of situation. So you're going to get into kind of deep questions about what it means to be sentient and what that means if you're not human but you are human. I am deeply interested in this game. I'm not going to lie. This is 100% up my alley. Um it
I
says
see
that
23 personality types. You can be a hero, a researcher, an artisan, a gambler. Uh, yeah, as you mentioned, it did come to PC in 2023. Well, let me look up what the Steam reviews are like on that.
as far as I could tell, and this is just from memory, they seemed pretty positive.
Yeah, I'm seeing a pretty, so very positive overall and recent. About 1,800 reviews. So yeah, I mean, it seems like it's a pretty good game. I um, I don't understand entirely what it is, but I'll definitely check it out. It's coming out this summer.
Yeah.
So
It's one of those two. This showcase was really great with actual pinpointed release dates. And
yeah.
this is one of those titles that didn't. It had the window. So I'm interested in why that is. And summer obviously is a busy time for gamers. So I wonder if we'll see this again sometime soon to get that original, like pinpointed release date. But yeah, summer. Gonna have to check it out.
Well, the next game you don't have to wait till summer because it's out now. It is Sticky Business.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, being the Indian former, have you had a chance to check this one out since
Yes, I
it's
have played
out?
this.
Oh, so
Um,
tell us a little bit about it.
it is it kind of works like unpacking. It's a narrative game, but you're not getting that narrative in dialogue. You're not getting that narrative like straight up. You are sort of uncovering things. You run your kind of internet sticker business, kind of like
I
an
love the
Etsy.
premise.
Yeah, it's very charming. And you are attempting to make stickers that will get more people interested. You can find you have a little section of like messages where people say like, "Oh, I'm a teacher and I'd really like to engage my students with dinosaurs or whatever." So you go and you try to find some dinosaur things, and then there's management in scale where you're trying to put all the stickers you can on one page so that you're not spending so much. So there's a bunch of little things, but really it is about reading about the people once they get your stickers. Are they excited about them? And they kind of reveal more and more about their life story as you go on, and it gets a little more touching, but it kind of light-hearted and lovely sort of adventure game. And it did do the shadow drop. It had been out previously on PC. Um, Came to Nintendo Switch and was like, drop in this day, which I love as a person, but as a journalist who covers games, that's so hard because
Yeah.
I want to be able to like shout this game out. It is a good game. People should go out and play it. But like I usually already have my week scheduled out, or and especially my days, and I'm like I just cannot drop everything to go and play Sticky Business.
That's exactly what happened with me with Penny's Big Breakaway. It's like, all right, I
Uh-huh.
have everything so budgeted out. Like, we have such a small crew over at Game Informer now that like I have to kind of schedule everybody out and be like, okay, well, this is when I'm going to tackle this. This is when I'm going to tackle this. And then Penny's Big Breakaway came out, and I'm like, well, everybody's busy, so I guess I'm gonna take on this review. And I love the Sonic Mania
Yeah.
developers, Evening Star. So the game seemed like it was up my alley, so I did it. But it's like I'm not gonna have a timely review on this at all because I
Right.
have a lot of other stuff on my plate already. So that's a very specific problem for people like us who cover video games. But for the people who are just players of video games, that's a pretty cool surprise.
Yeah, 100%. And it's one of those games that when you talk about it to other people before this announcement happened, you're like 100% sure it's already on the Switch because the aesthetic matches so much
Yeah.
that it was sort of surprising to me that it wasn't already on there. But
Well, it's out now, and it's on sale to kick off its existence on Switch. Normally, it's $10 for the game, the regular game, or $13 for the Ultimate Edition or the complete bundle. And it's 10% off until May 8th. So if that sounds up your alley, kind of did a makeshift eShop gem of the week there. But we are going to do a real eShop gem of the week later on because we have to when you're here.
yeah.
A next one that was on the Indie World Showcase is one that I actually have had a chance to play myself, and that is Anton Blast. So this almost has like inspiration from games like the Wario games and Sonic and like Yoshi's Island, even, where you play this guy who the I think it's like demons have stolen his like booze stash, and he's very upset about that, and he's just like basically wreaking havoc to get it back, and like you're barreling through these levels, and it reminds me a lot of a game that another one that I'm surprised is not on Switch, Pizza Tower.
Yeah.
And by the way, I got to hang out with those guys, the Pizza Tower devs and the creator of Anton Blast, all good peeps. So Anton Blast, it you basically like barrel your way through these levels. There's all these like obstacles and enemies and everything that you have to get through. And then you get all the way to the end, you recover your stuff. And then because like he's like a demolitions expert, so he sets off the demolition bombs or dynamite or whatever, and the level starts collapsing around you. So you have a timer then to get out of the level, and you're going backwards through the level, but it's not just like you're replaying the same stuff. A lot of the time you're like, because the level is like coming down, you're like finding new ways to get out, but like you have to kind of speed run it because you have to get out before the bombs go off. So it's a really cool looking game. It plays really well. I am going to say a little bummed by the release date that they gave, because this was the announcement of that was November 12th is when it comes out, and I was hoping for a lot earlier because one, I can't wait to play it, and two,
Mm-hmm.
November is so busy.
Yep.
So I'm hoping it doesn't get lost in the shuffle there, because it is a very cool game based on like, I think I played like 5 levels at PAX West.
Yeah.
But what am I missing here?
I mean, your point about November is so good. Indie games it's so dangerous for them to release in the height of like the holiday season, because that is kind of the AAA time of year. People are going to be focused on that, and there are a lot of not just players are focused on other things, but again, talking kind of inside baseball, journalists are busy that time of year.
Mm-hmm.
So it is a very difficult thing. I am interested in the fact that it is so early in the year and they've already planted their flag for a specific date in November.
I think it's the first game to have a specific November date.
Yeah. I think they might have one of those emergency meetings we were talking about earlier, like when things start to come out around that time. Be like, are we going to move? Is this going to? But I love that they are excited and they think that that's 100% when they're coming out. And again, like you said, it's going to be a fun game. So I hope that it gets the attention that it deserves, even though it is hitting in a dangerous time.
And also, there is a demo on the eShop for Anton Blast if you'd like to check it out and like see what it's like, see what it's all about. It is a very fun game. If it's anything like the build that I played back in, I guess it was August of last year out at PAX West. But all right, next game on our list, Valley Peaks. That's coming out sometime this year. Give me a quick rundown about what this is, because I actually missed this trailer when it happened because I was doing other stuff.
So Valley Peaks is another sort of narrative action game in the vein of, say, like a Short Hike, and it's not only narratively like that, but also if you look at it, it looks very similar. And also like Surmount, you are climbing. That is the basis of what you are doing in the game. It looks like it's going to be a cozy not that challenging, but still a little challenging climbing game, short, sweet, probably like I'm going to walk away from this and be like, oh, that was so lovely. My life is better for having played that. I'm also interested that this is the game that gets the 2024. I think it's one of two games that got that just sometime this year release window.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if there's something going on behind the scenes where they weren't able to pinpoint even just like summer or something, or they're I don't know. It is bad to speculate, but also I can't help it. So yeah, this should be fun for anybody who's in that sort of like a short hike vein who enjoyed that game. You should have this on your radar.
And like you said, it's coming sometime this year. That brings us to one that I think a lot of people are extremely excited for, Lorelei and the Laser Eyes. So
Yeah,
it's a
yeah.
non-linear puzzle game from Annapurna, one of the most acclaimed indie houses out there. So why should people have this on their radar?
I have a preview of this up on my website, so go check that out if you haven't seen anything about this. This game has been shown before, and we've seen it in several different places. And previously, I couldn't tell you what it was about. Like every time it's popped up, it's been like cut, weird thing, cut, maze, cut, someone doing something weird. Um, Getting hands on with it, I am so much more in love with it than before. It is built on the structure of kind of old school survival horror type games. Um, so you're like, you show up in a forested kind of foggy area. You're next to a car. Like that's really all you have to go on. You go in, and I decided to check out the car because I'm like, okay, what's going on? You have elements of inventory, so that you don't have a huge inventory. You've got a couple of things in there. There are keys. I'm like, okay, let's see if the keys actually work on the car. And they do. But then you open the first thing, which I believe is a letter, which is telling you, okay, you're here because of this. An artist invited you to an old hotel so that you could be part of this big art thing. But when you open it, it says memory unlocked or rediscovered or something like that. I forget the exact wording. And immediately I'm paranoid. I'm immediately paranoid because I'm like, wait a minute. I had the keys to this car. I unlocked this car. I assumed this was my car, and I'm here because apparently this letter. Why would I not remember this memory? Why would I be here without knowing? Why would this unlock a memory for me? I don't know what this is or why it's happening. And it only got worse when I moved on I found an instruction manual. And I thought this was just going to be like how cars work or something. The instruction manual is a legit in-game meta commentary from the developer to you on how to play the game. And anyone who knows my love of Tunic knows I love this sort of conceit. So it's like in the game knows it's a game. And that is a theme that continues on for the rest of the game. And it only gets creepier and weirder and more meta. And I'm like, oh, I'm so in love with this. So you find your way to I'm trying to say hospital. Well, that's not the right word. Hotel. And just like in classic survival horrors, you don't have control over your camera. It goes at weird different angles. Things don't feel good. Like the atmosphere is creepy. Something feels like it's going to pop out at you. Everything is black and gray, and hints of important things are like red. So like there's a very beautiful visual style to this game. As you approach, you hear dog barking. And in this genre, when you hear a dog barking, something bad is going to happen, right? So you roll up to the gates. Of course, they're locked. And you hear a dog barking. You're expecting the worst. And what pops out? A cute little black lab who's got a letter in his mouth. He's on the other side of the gates. He sticks his little nose through so you can grab the letter. And it's your first hint. Nothing bad happens. He's lovely. We all love him. So like they're messing with me in the best possible way because they know what your expectations are going to be. They are subverting them and just making it into something that you're absolutely in love with. From what I can tell of what I played for this preview, even though the foundations are all things that make you think you're going to start fighting zombies at some point or like something's going to come out and scare you, it is not a survival horror, but a puzzle game. And I love the way they're playing with this because survival horror has an element of puzzle figuring out.
Yeah, of course. Like Resident
Usually.
Evil, Silent Hill, they all have puzzles as well.
Yeah. This seems to be a puzzle game, first and foremost.
Okay,
And
but
it's
with
using all of those.
survival horror elements.
Yeah. I mean, it's not even just elements. It literally is you're swimming in survival horror, but it is a puzzle game. And it's such a well-balanced mix of genres to the point where like I'm always expecting something to come out and get me, but the puzzles are really what it's all about. So you're going through, it's giving you clues. You feel, so far I feel really smart because I'm like, I noticed a little thing in the letter which ended up being the code I needed to get in the door. And then there was another little thing that was just sort of mentioned. I'm like, I'm going to remember that because that seems like it's going to be the solution to something. And then you enter into this hotel and it's just weird and you don't know what's going on. They have a fun hint system set up where you can call someone in their room and they can kind of talk you through whatever puzzle you're working on currently. So like this hits a little closer to like Return of the Obra Dinn as far as
Okay.
puzzles. It seems to me like it's going to be like a real smart person's puzzle game. So I'm going to have to like go through, my notebook is going to look wild by the end of this. I already know. I'm going to have red string attached everywhere. It's going to be fantastic. Go and check this out. Like, put it on your radar. It is next month.
Yeah,
Like
May 16th.
May 16th is the release date, and it's
a week removed from the biggest indie day of all time.
Yeah. Thank God. Thank God it did not hit it that May 9th.
What if they give you the thing like, oh, guess what, guys? We got it done early. Releasing a week ahead of schedule. They do that sometimes.
They would do that just to mess with me. But yeah, no, this is a game that you should have. Like, this is 100% going to be at Game of the Year discussions. It is going to be in like the Game Awards. It is going to be like, this is going to be a game and you want to play it.
I believe Kyle Hilliard at Game Informer did get a chance to play some of it, and he came away pretty impressed as well. So definitely one to keep on your radar. And then the next game is Europa.
Yeah.
And that has a demo out right now, but basically it looks like a kind of a Studio Ghibli style, like visuals. You're kind of exploring, like, what is it, like a moon? Like an alien planet, alien moon or something like that, like using a jetpack and kind of making your way around. It does have a demo available right now, so you can check that out if you want. But, I mean, am I missing anything else about Europa?
Europa is so cute. You can go check it out. I have some gameplay up on the site, but absolutely beautiful. You're playing as an android whose maker has died, and it seems like you're going to be looking for other people who are on this planet. It's sort of Earth has gone the way of the dodo and they moved to a different planet, but you're strangely the only person there, so you're trying to figure that out. Absolutely gorgeous gameplay, really fun. You are playing around with a jetpack and like zooming around, and so it's a lot of fun just to be in the world and to move around and everything. This one is hard. This one was sad. When I saw this on the showcase, I was really sad because the game was originally announced to launch, I believe, April the 16th or so. So by the time the showcase happened, it should have been out. And to see it at the showcase, I'm like, man.
And get
playing this.
Get the daunted sometime this year.
This year, yeah.
That's a bummer. I didn't realize it had a release date.
So yeah, that's where we are with this, but I'm willing to wait as long as possible because I really loved what I played of it. If you have a chance to go play that demo, absolutely go check that out.
Yeah, so that is Europa coming sometime this year. This one was a shock to me, but not because of the reasons that like it's coming to Switch. It was just kind of a shock to me that this would be on an indie showcase. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Splintered Fate. That is a previous Apple Arcade exclusive. I
Hmm.
have always wanted to check this out, but I don't want to use touch controls, and I also didn't. I can't just play a game on my phone using a controller. Like I've tried it a few times. Like I tried playing Sonic Dream Team, and I was like, I'll just wait for this exclusivity to eventually fade, and it'll come to Switch or something. But like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Splintered Fate is a game that like has been on my radar ever since it came to Apple Arcade. It's a TMNT roguelite. And it's like that is so cool. It's a roguelite brawler, almost reminiscent of Hades. And I mean, it looks like a blast. It has pretty good reception from Apple Arcade, and it's coming to Switch in July. So that's a pretty big win for me, even though I was kind of shocked to see it on an indie showcase.
Hmm.
I think just I don't associate TMNT like a big brand like that with like indie developers, even though the best TMNT game of all time is probably an indie game in Shredder's Revenge. So it is. I mean, it definitely has the
Yep.
pedigree there, but like I mean, though I am a diehard Turtles in Time stan as well. So yeah, that's coming out in July. Anything else you have to say about that particular
Nope, I think you
title?
covered it real good.
All right, so Cat Quest 3. Lots of cats in this indie world showcase. I have tried the first Cat Quest game and I kind of bounced off of it. Is there any reason I should be excited for Cat Quest 3?
Um, every time I see this, and I have seen it recently, I'm going to talk about that. Um, it is reawakening like just how cute that is. It's like, oh,
Adorable.
pirates, cats, what? I love it. Hand drawn art. I'm always a sucker for it. Um, I don't I don't have a lot of depth of knowledge as to the series or what's going on, but it does look like it's very fun and has a lot of good personality. The big thing that stood out for me in this particular showcase showing was that it appeared the week before in the Triple I Initiative showcase, which was a
Yeah.
big indie showcase.
God, that had so
Um,
many good games on it. The Triple I
so
Initiative
many good.
crushed it. We talked about it a little
Absolutely.
bit on that week, but yeah, that was we've been eating good if you're an indie fan lately.
Yeah, and next week is the ID at Xbox showcase, so,
Oh,
like,
that's
you've got
right.
showcases, you know?
Showcases on showcases.
But the funny thing was it appeared at the showcase and didn't give a release date, and I was like, "That's unusual, why would they show it not?" And then the next week they pop up, and then, "August the 8th, everybody, we're coming." Like, that's hilarious. So, yeah, that's really all I have to share on Cat Quest 3. Hope everyone's excited to be a cat. I think of Wesley every time anything pirate pops up. So I
Yeah.
hope that he's
He's the
like
resident
in
pirate
cat
fan.
cosplay, like playing the pirate.
Yeah, I mean, again, the first one I tried and kind of bounced off it. I bought, I think, a bundle of like 1 and 2, Cat Quest 1 and Cat Quest 2, and I was like, oh, well, these I definitely like these. I like cats and I like RPGs, and I don't know, something just didn't do it for me. I think it was like the gameplay style and like the combat style just didn't do it for me. But I'm interested in giving this another shot. So that's out August 8th. And then Stitch was the next title. And that
Mhm.
was one that was another shadow drop. Like, hey,
Yep.
guess what? You can play this right now on your Nintendo Switch. And it's like a puzzle game built around like stitching.
Yeah.
So
I've
like if you're
heard it
like,
kind of likened to like a pit cross sort of game. I've heard nothing but good things about the people who are interested in playing it. I think again this is a difficulty with indies just shadow dropping in the middle of things.
mm,
Not a lot of people get a chance. There's not a lot of time to hype up whatever this is. So if you are interested, you go immediately. And if you're not, you tend to kind of not see it. But you should check this one out because it is just a breath of fresh air. You're happy moment of break where you're sipping tea and feeling cozy and completing some puzzles.
and I didn't realize this was also an Apple Arcade game before coming
Yes.
over to Switch. I have Apple Arcade. Why don't I like this is a game I wouldn't need to have a controller for. This actually seems like it's best experience with a touchscreen. It's one of those games.
Hmm.
So I should just download it on Apple Arcade.
Apple Arcade needs to be doing its indie showcases.
It should. I mean, honestly, I'm surprised they haven't done like a showcase of like, here's all the games coming to Apple Arcade in like the next 6 months or something like that. I feel like that would do pretty well. Like, I don't think a
Yeah.
lot of people realize there's a full 3D Sonic game on Apple Arcade, or there was a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles roguelite that is exclusive to Apple Arcade. Like, I had no idea Stitch was an Apple Arcade game prior to
Yep.
coming over here. And like, they have major developers, like major, both indie and otherwise developers making games for Apple Arcade. What's the one that I love so much? I reviewed it on Steam, but like, God, I'm bringing up my games folder here on my phone to see if I can figure out what game I'm thinking of.
For anybody who's not watching the
Outlanders.
video, things are just popping out of a folder. It's wild.
Outlanders. That was one that I really enjoyed. I think that was that was an Apple Arcade, or was it Netflix? It was one of those that's like,
Netflix is, again, one of those that's like Oxenfree 2 is on
yeah.
Netflix. It's like, and most people don't know that. You can just go play if you have Netflix. And what if we just had a big showcase of all these things? But yeah.
And before we got our one more thing at the end of this this showcase, we did get a little bit of a sizzle reel that like either announced release dates or reaffirmed them.
I got a bone to pick, Shay. Like, I was watching this and I'm like, put some respect on these names because they deserve to be there. Obviously, Animal Well, May 9th. We knew that. Everyone's excited. But Duck Detective, The Secret Salami, and I am not joking, is amazing. Everyone deserves to play that game. And they got a May, 23rd release date. And that should have been like a highlight of the show. We should have opened with The Secret Salami. I am so in love with this game.
Secret Salami is such a funny name.
It's so good. The whole premise is it's sort of like a detective noir story. You're playing as a hand-drawn duck. The duck is going through a divorce. Like, there's so much that's just hilarious with this game. I really should have been elsewhere. Another Crab's Treasure, we knew April 25th, so it makes sense that was in this rapid fire sort of thing. But the other one was Shim, which I'm like,
is it Skim or Shim?
I'm never really sure how to say this.
I played this at Summer Game Fest, I think 2 years ago, and it was super cool. I love it. It like, you're hopping from like shadow to shadow. Like, you're like this like little like creature that dwells in like shadows, and like you can't be out on the ground.
You're actually a shadow. You're a cute little shadow guy, and you've like lost your human. Your connection to your human is somehow separated. So you are on the journey to go find your human and reconnect. And so, but you can only travel via shadow because you're a shadow creature. So it's just an absolutely fun kind of puzzly sort of adventure game of
like, how do I get from this shadow to that shadow? And it's like, all right, well, it's a shadow from like a sign that's like sitting on the ground, and like you have to like pull the sign back or something, so the shadow flings you like as the sign rebounds from you pulling it back, and then it sends you flying over and you land in another shadow. And it's like, basically, how do I get from this shadow to that shadow and progress through this thing? And like, sometimes it's like, all right, a car's driving by, you can get in that shadow and go alongside it while it drives, or like a person's walking past, and like, all right, if I get in his shadow, I can follow along in his path and then jump to another shadow when he goes to turn away from the path that I want to go on. So super fun. That was one that most caught my eye in that sizzle reel. Although like Animal Well, I can't wait for that one.
Yeah. And that is July 18th.
Yeah, Shim.
Just shouting that out.
Skim, Shim. There's also Bzzzt. Bzzzt. It's BZZZZT. What is that one?
This one wasn't on my radar, but I know a lot of people were super excited about it. Hold on, let me bring it up so that I can talk more intelligently. Game. How many Z's is in?
Appears to be 3 Z's.
So many Z's, you guys. Okay.
But don't sleep on this one, huh?
Become a tiny ZX8000 robot and begin your journey through a beautiful pixel art world inspired by games iconic to the platformer genre. It is a pixel art 2D platformer in the vein of like a Mega Man or something. It's got a lot of attitude. It's obviously inspired by old school platformers. I know that there are people who are 100% excited to see this, that this was their highlight of the show. I'm not that, but
Sure.
I love the way that it looks. And it's, again, another one of those games that probably should have been highlighted in the main thing. But then again, like, what do you put in a sizzle reel?
Yeah.
So I'm
I
glad
mean,
that it showed up.
I feel like the sizzle reels are less about like magnitude of the stuff on offer and more about like we didn't get any new information in this. Like it's just a reminder like, hey, Animal Well's one that you should be excited for.
Yeah.
We have already shown it somewhere else. You don't need to like have an entire segment devoted to it, but like just kind of a reminder, hey, this cool looking indie is coming, and also the visuals and atmosphere of that game speak for itself.
Right. But
But
unlike the Duck Detective Secret Salami, where we were getting a release date that no one knew about and I was excited for.
maybe they just didn't have like, because I mean, I wonder if like the developers just didn't have time to put together a new trailer or like a presentation or anything. Because
Right.
like, I feel like that's also a pretty big lift. Like having worked with so many developers and like being like, hey, can we get like 5 screenshots for this preview that we're doing? And they're like, oh man, I don't know. That might take like weeks. And it's like, it's stuff
Yeah.
you wouldn't think takes a long time. Like splicing together a new trailer or like getting your group together to like do a presentation might just be enough that they're like, hey, we're in the final stages of this development cycle. We are QAing the crap out of this game. Like we cannot take like 2 hours to shoot like a 5-minute segment about our game. So maybe that's it.
Yeah.
So we got a one last thing. I think this every time that comes to this, everybody's like, okay, here we go, Hollow Knight.
Nope.
Here
Nope.
we go, Hades 2 coming to Switch, which it's not announced as yet, but SteamWorld Heist 2. I don't think anybody saw this one coming.
No. Not only was this an announcement for the game to exist in general, but it also gave a release date at the same time, and it's only a few months out. Like that's
Yeah.
wild. I SteamWorld is a hit or miss kind of series for me. I know that there are people who loved the original SteamWorld Heist.
Mm-hmm.
I am not one of them.
It's like turn-based 2D strategy.
Yeah, and like there are elements of like GTA in there, and like there are elements of like it should be fun. It looks like it's got a lot going on. I was not expecting to see the gameplay that we saw. I was not expecting to see the kind of depth of here's all your equipment and here's like special things you can do. But that makes sense because it's coming out in August 8th. And so like it was a very good, as far as objectively trailers go and reveals go, it was very good. I'm interested to know overall how excited people were for this, because this was obviously the one last thing,
Mm-hmm.
and Nintendo expected it to be a huge hit. But in most of the discussions I've had, and I've had a lot, it seems like people are sort of like, oh yeah, and they revealed the one last thing, blah blah blah, and then that's sort of the end of the discussion. I feel like there are games that are a lot more talked about or beloved throughout the rest of this. I mean, Duck Detective could have been here. That's what I'm saying. That's all I'm saying, Nintendo.
I'm gonna have to mark Duck Detective down because you are, like I said, you are the queen of the indies,
Mm-hmm.
and I trust your opinion on these games so much that like Duck Detective was not a game that was like on my radar at all, and now apparently it's like going on my wish list.
Yeah, I didn't have it on my radar at all too. I think it was during the Steam Next Fest where I played it. I'm like, "Oh, this is actually really good, you guys. Let's play this."
So, SteamWorld Heist 2 coming out August 8th. As we wrap up our conversation about this Indie World Showcase, which game that was shown are you most excited about?
I I legitimately think Lorelei and the Laser Eyes is going to be the indie game
I thought
of.
that might have been your answer.
Yeah. Like I
Based on
love
your
Little Kitty Big City, and I want it to do well. I obviously I have a lot of love for a lot of games that showed up, but this is when you play a game that is a certain tier, you just kind of know it when you play it. Like
Mhm.
it's going to be that.
I'll need to check that one out. For me, I think it's Little Kitty Big City and the TMNT Splintered Fate
Yeah.
game coming over from Apple Arcade, because it's like grew up playing, watching, reading everything TMNT, and it's kind of having a bit of a renaissance now.
Yeah.
And we're getting a lot of new games, a lot of ported games and everything. And it's so cool to see that happening. And this is one that I've always been wanting to check out and just haven't because it was on Apple Arcade. And that didn't seem like the ideal way to play a Hades style roguelite game. So
Uh-huh.
I think Stitch, I will absolutely check out on Apple Arcade. TMNT Splintered Fate, I'm waiting till that July release date on Switch.
Yeah.
Which indie game were you most hoping would show up, but we didn't actually learn anything new about it in last week's showcase?
I am interested in, I mean, I don't know if there's anything that I'm like, oh, I'm disappointed this isn't here. But there were a few things that were at the GDC Nintendo thing that didn't show up. So I'm thinking like World of Goo 2
Oh,
didn't
yeah.
show up here.
I'm surprised, too, because I feel like that one's still flying under the radar, and it's, what, next month?
Something like that, yeah. So even the fact that it didn't show up in like the sizzle reel is interesting to me. On Your Tail, I believe it's the other one, where
Oh, I don't know that one.
it's a charming little detective game. I think some people are going to enjoy it. I don't think it's not going to hit like massive mainstream love.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, just having kind of some of those things not hit during that is interesting to see. It's almost always so interesting to see what hits or what doesn't hit as much as what does hit during these showcases. But I'm wondering how much. Obviously, people are going to be Silk Song.
Yeah.
Where is it? I know that they're going to do this, and I really, really hope for that reason that it does show up at Summer Game Fest, just so that we can kind of have it and get it out of the way, and then we'll see what the next game is that everybody really wants to know about.
I honestly think Silk Song has a better chance to show up in the ID at Xbox thing next week than it did this Indie World Showcase, because remember, the
Yeah,
last time we heard anything about Silk Song was at an Xbox presentation during Summer Game Fest 2022.
something like that,
That
I
was when
think.
they said, like, oh, all these games are coming out in the next 12 months. And somebody was like, even Silk Song? And they're like, we said what we said, the next 12 months. And then here we are. But like, I think
Yeah,
they must have some sort of either relationship, partnership, deal, like marketing deal with Xbox. So I would say that it's either going, like, if I had to guess, it's going to either come up in the ID at Xbox thing, or they might just be saving it for Summer Game Fest, but at the Xbox presentation that they end up doing, the not developer direct, what do they call it? Just, I think, just the Xbox showcase.
yeah, something like that.
But I think that Xbox seems to have like a deal with them.
Yeah, it was very interesting to see it pop up at that Xbox thing because no one knew it was coming, and everyone is of course very excited about that. I don't. Maybe we see it. I'm so I'm never
You dare not
allowing the
speak its
game.
name. I
I'm
know.
not even gonna let people say it. But maybe they have some sort of like, and it's coming, we promise, situation. I think is the most I'm going to allow myself to believe in.
Fair enough. So thank you so much for lending your expertise to our rundown of the Indie World Showcase. As a reminder, you can find stories on all of those games, I'm assuming, on the Indie Informer.
Yeah, you can see a little roundup as well with some of my thoughts and dreams that happened or didn't happen in the showcase.
Yes, so go check that out if you want to learn more about any of those games. And Jill, we only have a few other stories to hit this week in the news segment. And you know I've been tracking on the Sonic the Hedgehog movie news coming out lately. We are about 8 months away from Sonic 3 hitting theaters. And we'll be talking about the newest piece of the Sonic Cinematic Universe puzzle in the next segment. But the big news is we now know who is playing Shadow in Sonic the Hedgehog 3. So, according to a report by the John Campea show, and later corroborated by the Hollywood Reporter, which I was looking at this. I'm not gonna be too much of a jerk here, but they used the exact same headline as the show that
Mm,
broke the news. So I'm not sure how much of a fan I am of that. But anyway, Keanu Reeves is reportedly joining the cast of Sonic the Hedgehog 3 as Shadow. It was previously rumored that Hayden Christensen, aka Anakin Skywalker, was going to be. And I think that I also heard rumblings that Keanu was in discussions with it as well. And I think on this show I've said that those are like the two perfect castings for Shadow. So if this report, which again it's the Hollywood Reporter and John Campea show, great track records, especially on Hollywood Reporter. Seems like they have independently verified this as well. If this report does end up being true, like the cast, first of all, casting for Shadow, perfect. And then the cast already includes Ben Schwartz, Idris Elba, James Marsden, Colleen O'Shaughnessy, Kristen Ritter, Cristo Fernandez, aka Danny Rojas from Ted Lasso, and plenty of other names from like previously big shows. So again, not 100% confirmed or officially announced by Paramount or Sega, but I'm pretty confident in it being accurate. So, how does that news strike you, Jill? Keanu as Shadow the Hedgehog.
It is so rare and so beautiful when the internet hears something and comes together in love and appreciation for one news story. I saw nothing but an outpouring of happiness for Keanu Reeves. Keanu Reeves can do no wrong. Everyone, like, literally, no one was upset by this. Everyone just came together and was like, yes, that's perfect. We love it, especially with the Idris Elba and him in Cyberpunk
Oh, right. Yeah.
reuniting. Uh, it was just like a really fun thing. Even if you're not like a huge fan of the actual movies, or if you're not a huge Sonic fan, like you saw this on your social media going through, and it was just good vibes, which I love.
We'll get into my review of the Knuckles series on Paramount Plus a little bit later on the show. But what's your level of affection for the Sonic movie series, and where are you kind of at with Sonic 3?
Um, I know how much you love them.
I love I think I don't want to get into it too much until later, but like I love Sonic 2. I think Sonic 1 is good for what it was. Sonic 2 was very good. And then we'll talk about the Knuckles series. I wouldn't say I love it. I think that the Mario movie is better. I think that I love the Fallout and
Yeah.
Last of Us series, and there's a lot of really good video game adaptations that have come out recently. I think Uncharted actually gets too much hate. I recently rewatched it. I got to review that prior to its release, and I came away being like, yeah, that was fun. It wasn't
Yeah.
like anything groundbreaking. It wasn't like super loyal to the show, but it was fun, or the game, but it was
I
fun.
remember doing that. I edited that review, doing editing around, and I was like, okay, yeah, that seems like a solid thing. But I think, yeah, there are people who like to dog on that kind of thing. As far as Sonic in particular, I don't have any like specific feelings, but in the macro, just like you were saying, I'm very excited of this new wave of media of all kinds that we are getting, adaptations of all kinds that we are getting, that are doing video games justice, that are bringing them to a larger audience that perhaps would not have been interested before. I wonder, like, it would be so cool to know if these like Sonic movies are bringing people into the Sonic series, and whether or not that's pushing some kind of revival and making Sonic games a little cooler, a little hipper, a little easier to greenlight.
Well, I know from talking to Sonic Team's Takashi Iizuka, he has said that like the brand, like after 2020 when the game or the first movie came out, he saw like a resurgence in like people playing Sonic games, talking about Sonic games, like beyond anything he has seen. Like I think he's been at the place for he's been at Sonic Team for like 30 years now, and he's like, yeah, this is like the most excitement I've seen around the brand in like a really long time. And that's why they've been putting out so many games. Like Sonic Colors Ultimate was
Mhm.
because they wanted to have a game come out when there was all this hype surrounding the Sonic franchise. And then Sonic Frontiers came after that, and there's been a whole lot of games that they've been putting out because of like riding this wave of hype that has really started with the Sonic movie, the first one.
Hmm. Whether or not that's good for the series, it's hard to tell.
I mean, I think it's been good for the series overall. There's been some hits and misses, but that's the history of Sonic.
Yeah. There you go. That's another quote for you.
Yeah. So in news that will impact very few people listening to this podcast, but still disappointing nonetheless, I saw this news on NintendoLife.com. Universal Studios has announced that the opening date of the Donkey Kong Country expansion to Super Nintendo World at Universal Studios Japan has been delayed. So it was originally set to open this spring, so like right around the corner, but
Mm-hmm.
it has been pushed to late 2024.
Lame.
Meanwhile, as far as we know, it's still scheduled to open in spring 2025 at the Orlando location as part of the Epic Universe Park. I mean, there's been no indication that that has changed. I know that I am personally thinking about planning a trip to Japan sometime this year, so this is a bit of a bummer, even though I'd probably be more Tokyo focused in that trip. But like, if this was open when I went there, like I would probably look at maybe taking the bullet train down to Osaka again and trying to do a repeat visit to Super Nintendo World and go check out the Donkey Kong Country stuff. But again, this doesn't really affect very many people listening to this show. I do have some listeners in Japan. Shout out to them. I was looking at my stats earlier today, but have you done the trek to either of the current Super Nintendo Worlds? So there's the one in Japan, which obviously is a lot less accessible for us. And then there's the one in Hollywood. Have you done either of
Right.
them?
I haven't, and I kind of want to for this year upcoming Summer Game Fest, just
Mm-hmm.
because you're in the area and like maybe I'll jump in there and see what's going on. But now with this news, who knows?
Well, I don't think the Donkey Kong Country stuff is coming to the Hollywood one because that I went to that one. It is so much more cramped than the Osaka
Oh
location,
yeah,
which is funny
that's a
because I'm actually
shame.
wearing a hoodie for the video viewers, an Osaka hoodie that I got when I was out there. It was a coffee shop that I really enjoyed, and I was like, oh, it just says Osaka on the front, and then on the back is like this whole like coffee graphic that they designed. It's just funny that I threw this on without thinking about talking about this on the show, but the Osaka location is so much more expansive than the LA location. And it's just because the real estate at Universal Studios Hollywood is
Yeah.
like, it's so much more cramped. It's almost like when you go to Disney World in Orlando versus Disneyland in Anaheim. It's just like, wow, this is a lot smaller than all of the parks that are over in like that Orlando suite of parks.
So you heard it from Shay. You have to go to Osaka in order to appreciate properly everything there is to see.
Well, it seems like the one in Orlando that's opening next year is going to be the true experience as well. Like, because like the one in LA doesn't have the Yoshi ride, it's not getting the Donkey Kong Country expansion. So like the Orlando one seems like it's going to be more in line with the original one over in Osaka. So I mean, maybe just wait until spring 2025 and go out to the one that's coming to Orlando. But
We're
still,
gonna need a Game Informer trip, I think. Maybe we have a big reunion out there.
hey, I mean, Alex and I did the Osaka one together, and then I went out to the LA one on my own. But yeah, I would love to go down there. Marcus Stewart lives down in
Mm-hmm.
Orlando. I think Wes LeBlanc is relocating to Orlando, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, there's a Game Informer enclave being formed down in Orlando.
Oh my gosh, I love it. We all show up in just like robes.
So yeah, that's the news out of Super Nintendo World. Last year at Gamescom, we heard rumblings of Nintendo showing off the Switch 2 to developers behind closed doors. And it looks like that's not going to be happening this year because Nintendo has announced it will not be at Gamescom 2024. And this comes from an outlet, a German outlet called Gameswirtschaft. I hope I am not butchering that too much. And then it was reported by Video Game Chronicle. So I don't know what this means, like, because they've traditionally had a decent presence at Gamescom. Does this mean that we're
Mm-hmm.
not getting any big holiday releases from Nintendo? Or are we just reading into it too much? Does this mean they're reserving their hands-on opportunities for other events? Because will they have announced the Switch successor by then? I don't know what it means. Do you like? How do you read that they're skipping Gamescom this year?
Anytime Nintendo does anything, I remember that Nintendo does whatever Nintendo wants to do. And trying to read any kind of logic into it can lead you down a path of
Mm-hmm.
madness because they don't work the same way as other platforms. So if this was like one of the other major platforms, I'd be like, that is a sensible way to read this. But for Nintendo, it could very well be they have decided like showcases are the way of the future. We don't need to be
Nintendo
spending the money
Directs.
to go out to things. Um, the Switch 2 is it's kind of another Silk song for me. Like, it's going to happen. Nobody doubts that there will be a successor to the Switch. It is such a good selling like piece of equipment.
And there's enough reporting to suggest that it is happening.
Right. But whether or not that is happening soon or in the next few years, again, you can't tell because the Switch has had a long life so far, and it is still doing very well, and people are still willing to pick it up and play things there. I would personally love to see a Switch 2. Over on my podcast with other indie-minded people, we've already come up with like our ideal Switch 2 lineup. So
Okay.
Nintendo, you're welcome to use that if you would like. um, I wonder how much things are tied to the Switch 2 and whether or not dates have been moving in the background, and that's why we're getting so much reporting that's contradictory. But at this point, we don't have an official word, and Nintendo is really a hard fish to catch in this particular sort of situation. They make their own decisions, they make weird decisions, and you just kind of have to go with it. I don't take away them not being at Gamescom as a doomsday scenario, or like I don't think it has any real bearing on whether or not we're going to get Switch 2 news or whether or not we're going to get games to play. Like, I think they are just playing around with maybe not having a presence because they don't need to have one,
Yeah.
like
I don't think it like it's so hard to predict anything Nintendo's doing, as you'd said. So I don't want to read too much into it. I think personally, it just means that they're going to probably have some news out there about the Switch successor, and they want to have all of the opportunities, like all the messaging and everything, controlled so tightly that they're just going to do it on their own Nintendo Direct. So
yeah.
I think they'll do what they do with Summer Game Fest, where they don't have a presence at Summer Game Fest, but they time a Nintendo Direct around that time frame, which was previously just the E3 time frame. Now it's the Summer Game Fest time frame, and
Yep.
that's where everybody kind of times their big announcements for. So I think we'll get a similar thing from Nintendo, where like we'll probably get a Nintendo Direct or some sort of showcase in August, which is when Gamescom traditionally happens. This year's event actually happens August 21st to the 25th. So we'll have a ton of news to talk about then, just maybe not Nintendo news, at least not related to Gamescom. So on the news front, Jill, we will wrap up on this. Epic Games' former chief operating officer, Donald Mustard, did an interview with Stephen Tottilo's GameFile. And this was actually his first interview since leaving Epic Games last September. And Totilo got a chance to ask him about a ton of topics. But the one that interests us the most here is he asked about like putting Nintendo properties in Fortnite, because you know that Fortnite has like it's the ultimate crossover from a perspective of like just every brand is here. Like
Mm-hmm.
the question I always ask is, all right, what's the more ambitious crossover, Super Smash Brothers or Fortnite? And it's tough because Fortnite has a wider reach in terms of like the brands, but I think that the care put into the individual characters in Smash Brothers far exceeds what we get in Fortnite. But nonetheless, it feels weird not having Nintendo properties in there because, like, you have Kratos, you have Master Chief, you have all these characters from like platform exclusives, but nothing Nintendo. So here's what
Yeah.
Donald Mustard said about trying to get Nintendo characters into Fortnite. Quote, Nintendo got really hung up on their characters showing up on platforms that weren't their platforms. They would be thrilled to have Nintendo characters in Fortnite, but just only if it's on their platform. So, they have a ton of platform exclusive characters already in there. You can play as Master Chief on your Switch copy of Fortnite if you want to, but Nintendo's hold up on this particular topic tells me that it's never going to happen. Like, we get Xbox games on Switch all the time now. Like, Ori came to Switch. We're getting like Minecraft is on every platform imaginable. We're just getting like Pentiment and Grounded and Sea of Thieves, all these games from previous Xbox exclusives coming over to other consoles. But Nintendo just seems so unwilling to budge on the exclusivity. But do you think Nintendo will ever ease up on a rule like this or this particular rule?
Um, Not in our generation of Nintendo. I think it will take major shifts, major change of upper management, major change of thinking and how Nintendo works, to get anything, because Nintendo is very well known to have a tight grip on its properties and be very focused on its own platforms, very much unlike the Xbox strategy of like wherever the players are, we'll meet them. It is, we are Nintendo. Nintendo is a certain thing, and it is for Nintendo, and anyone who wants to meet us can meet us at Nintendo.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not surprised to hear that there's been difficulty. I'm not surprised to hear that we're probably never going to get a Nintendo property on anything else really, but not in Fortnite, especially because Fortnite, I mean, the funniest thing about Fortnite is you get these characters who are like, I really enjoyed Dragon Ball Z and all of that, and everyone jumped back in for that. But seeing those characters with guns is
Yeah.
so funny. So, like, I think that's going to be a major hurdle for Nintendo to see some of its beloved. Like, I cannot imagine them ever being okay with like Mario with a gun or Link with a gun. Like,
Peach
they tend.
sniping somebody.
Oh, it would be so amazing to see. I'm not gonna lie, I would love it.
I mean, we
But
got
like,
Mario with a gun in the Mario plus Rabbids games.
yeah, they do have some situations like that, and maybe they would get like Rabbids Mario. But I, yeah, I think that they are too concerned with, like you said, keeping a tight rein on their own IP to allow for that sort of thing to happen, because once it's in Fortnite, like their characters get to dance in certain ways and
Yeah.
are represented in different ways than they're expecting, and they can't control that. So yeah,
Yeah.
sad.
Before we wrap up here, because we're going to take our only break of this already very long episode,
Yeah.
what is the best indie game created with a Nintendo license? Because, you know, Nintendo's gotten better at like licensing out its properties. Like, who would have ever thought we would get a Crypt of the Necrodancer
Yeah.
or
See,
game
again,
starring Zelda?
that was the first thing that came to mind. Cadence of Hyrule. But it is another one of those games that prompts the what is an indie conversation, so I
Yeah.
don't want to jump into that at all.
Okay, well, what's the best? Fine, best licensed game. Is it Ubisoft making Mario plus Rabbids? Is it Cadence of Hyrule? Is it the Hyrule Warriors games? Do any of these? Do you have affection for any of these
I
games?
have affection for all of these games, and I love them a lot. And I love that Nintendo like, I think Cadence of Hyrule probably was that excitement moment, just because I couldn't believe that it was happening.
Seriously, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, well, we're going to take our only break of this episode, and when we get back, I will be giving a preview of an upcoming Switch game, Jill will be giving a review of a brand new Switch game, and I will be delivering my thoughts on the new Knuckles Paramount Plus series. We will be right back. We are back, and as you heard last episode, I spent much of last week in New York City to check out a couple of upcoming games. One of those games was Super Monkey Ball Banana Rumble. It is the first all-new Super Monkey Ball game in 12 years. So as someone who loved Super Monkey Ball 2 on GameCube, I was super excited to have the chance to go check this out. So Jill, first of all, do you have any history with the Super Monkey Ball games?
I've dabbled. I can't say that I'm like a huge fan, but I love the humor, and the title of this one is so fantastic.
We talked about this on the Game Informer show this week as well, and they have put so many, like, it used to be called like Super Monkey Ball 2. Let me bring up the Super Monkey Ball franchise Wikipedia page.
I'm so ready
because
for this.
Here are the names. It's so hard to keep them straight now. So we have Super Monkey Ball Banana Rumble, which is the one we're talking about today. Then there was Super Monkey Ball Banana Mania in 2021, which was a remake of the first three games. In 2019, we got Super Monkey Ball Banana Blitz HD. 2014, we had Super Monkey Ball Bounce, which I don't even know what that is. Then 2012, we had Super Monkey Ball Banana Splits, which was and then there was in 2006, which was the Wii game that we just got remastered, was Banana Blitz. So Banana Splits and Banana Blitz are two separate games. They've really fallen into like the banana
Yeah,
wordplay, it
there's
seems.
a theme here, and I feel like you should do at some point, maybe on the podcast, like, is it ice cream flavor or Super Monkey Balls?
So I didn't know what to expect from Super Monkey Ball Banana Rumble. I was like, okay, well, I played Banana Mania and Banana Blitz HD when they came out in the recent years. And I was like, okay, well, I know this one is a remaster of a Wii game and this other one is a remake of the three original games. But they don't really feel like they have a place in the modern gaming landscape. Like they feel like relics of their time. I went into Super Monkey Ball Banana Rumble being like, okay, how does that translate into this new this current landscape with like kind of like the way like Shenmue 3 came out and people were like, "Oh my god, Shenmue 3, it's finally happening." And they're like, "Ugh, what is this?" And it's like, "Oh, loyal to the Shenmue gameplay from 20 plus years ago. It just feels this way because game design conventions and gameplay best practices have all evolved so drastically in that time that like it just feels so different." So Banana Rumble, I went there and I was like, okay, let's see how this plays. And I came out of my demo so impressed and like so excited to play more of this game. So not only do the physics feel great, and like they've nailed the physics, they feel amazing, which is so important in a game like this. But they got rid of the jump button, and instead now there is a spin dash. So like literally borrowing from one of Sega's other biggest franchises, Sonic, you can just like kind of peel out now as a monkey ball and like spin
Was
it.
that an intentional banana pun?
What did I even say?
Peel out.
Oh, I what it's called. They should have called it a peel out. Oh my god, Jill. Get
Write to them right now.
get Sega and RGG on the horn right now, which is hilarious. So a lot of people don't realize that the creator of Super Monkey Ball and the creator of the Yakuza series are the same guy. So, and also the same studio now. Like this is developed by the studio that is doing all these Like a Dragon and Judgment and everything games.
Love it.
It's so tonally different. And I love that like they're the same people making these like crime soap operas in the Japanese underbelly. And now it's like a monkey ball. You're these monkeys in balls and you get through puzzles.
Yep.
So the spin dash, it just flows so much better with the gameplay of Super Monkey Ball. It should be called Peel Out though.
Yeah.
And oh my god, I can't get off that. So yeah, so the it just flows so much better with the core gameplay where like you start on one end and you got to get down to the objective on the other end, and that just feels so good with the spin dash, and then the levels themselves are so cleverly designed with the spin dash in mind. So I played a little bit of adventure mode, which is the kind of like campaign or story mode, and then I played the battle modes, which are the newly announced things this week. And the adventure mode has 200 levels, and I played I think about 20 of them, and it was just a really great time. Like there were some like they really play into the spin dash element where it's like, okay, you've got to like you can go like the long meandering path around and like collecting all the bananas, taking your time getting to the goal, or you could use the spin dash and like skip parts of the level. Like there's like lips and ramps and everything that you need to have enough speed to like shoot off, and that gets you like you could just jump all the way across. You have to like manage how fast you're going though, because you can go flying way past the goal, or you can like kind of like fall short of it, or you can like bounce off of it and go flying. So like you have to nail it just right. And that was like so much of the fun. And each level in adventure mode has like these side missions. So it's like, did you collect the golden banana, which is just like this one collectible within the world? Did you collect a set number of bananas like otherwise within in the level? And did you finish it within a certain time? And did you finish it in a certain time, it's like you have to level skip or like skip portions of the levels in order to get that, because it's like, okay, well, if I were to follow this path all the way up and go up to the goal that way, it's going to take like 18 or 19 seconds, and it's like, no, finish this within 4 seconds. And it's like, what?
Okay.
And then like it really challenges you to think like, okay, well, how would I get up there in 4 seconds or less? And it's like, okay, well, there's this moving platform. If I hit it just right when it's like kind of overlapping with the main platform that I'm on, it forms a little bit of a lip, and then I can shoot up there. Maybe that'll get me up there in time. And then there's other ones like, okay, well, it's like a multi-tiered level. Like maybe I have to drop down off of here and hit just right, like bounce off of the edge of this platform, and then it'll shoot me over to the goal. Cause it's like, there was one where it was like, it took me like a minute to get through it. And like the goal was like, finish in less than 12 seconds. And I'm like, what? How would you ever do that? And it's like, okay, well, you have to like almost like Super Mario 64's like slide level, where it's like you can drop down and like skip huge chunks of the slide. That's what you had to do in that particular level. So that was super fun. Again, the physics feels so good. The battle modes, the mini games were always my favorite part of Super Monkey Ball 2 on GameCube. The battle modes seem like they might be in that same vein, and they seem a lot more fleshed out than the mini games of the past Monkey Ball games. So was it 5 games that I played? So there was Race, which almost felt like Mario Kart-esque. Like, and you can do these in 2-player local or up to 16-player online, and then any like any players that aren't there, you can either fill their spots with bots or you can just leave them as empty. So like I was I was playing a game before it's out, so there were no online players, so I had to fill it with 15 bots, so like a field of 16. And the race, it reminds me so much of Mario Kart, because like you're going through and it's just like these like courses that they designed specifically for the racing mode. It's not like you're racing through like the adventure mode levels. And they have catch-up mechanics, and usually that's really frustrating. But in this, like, it's not just like, oh, you got like the ultimate power up because you're in last place. There is some of that, but the levels themselves are actually less fleshed out for the people in the lead. So like as you're rolling down, like there might be like these like chunks of the level missing, and there's only like a tiny little narrow path that can get you across that gap. Whereas if you're in last place, it's just a flat surface. So like there's no gaps in the level. So like everybody who is going through it actually, based on their place in the race, experiences that level differently. So it's harder for the people in the lead. So that's like a fun twist on catch-up mechanics.
Yeah, that's a really cool idea.
Yeah, and then there's Banana Hunt, which is pretty standard. I mean, it's maybe my least favorite of the mini games, but it's just like almost like an arena style, like circular level with like multi-level tiers and everything. And there's clouds that are going around dropping bananas, and you're just competing with everybody else on the stage to collect the bananas, and whoever has the most bananas at the end wins.
Yeah.
Pretty easy, pretty straightforward. There's Baboom, which is basically bomb tag. Like there's the field of 16. I think there's 4 bombs, and every like it's randomized who starts with the bomb, and you have to go around throughout this like level and tag other people, and that basically passes off the bomb to them. And then when the round ends, whoever has the bomb explodes and they're no longer in it. And I think there were like 4 rounds, I guess. That would make sense mathematically.
So we're talking about like friendship ending level things, right?
Yes. It almost reminds me of like Fall Guys, but not like in like the Battle Royale sense. Goal Rush was a surprisingly fun one. So like you all start at the top of a hill, and you're going down really fast speeds, and there are different goals, like the goals that are from like adventure mode with like the tape that you go through, and you're going down these hills, and the goals are worth different point values based on how hard they are to get. And you could get the easy ones at the top, and it was like, okay, that's like 2 points or whatever. And then like you get further down, it's like, okay, well, these are like worth like 40 points. And then you get further down, it's like, oh, there's one that's like worth like 60 points. But like if you go too far, you just wasted an entire like, I don't know, it was like 15 seconds getting all the way down there. And if you miss like the high value goal, you got 0 points on that roll down the hill. So it's like, do you take the easy ones early on and like just like bank those points, almost like skee ball, where it's like, all right, do you go for the hundreds up in the corner, or do you like play it safe? And it's like, okay, even if I miss the 40, I'm still going to get 20 points.
Right.
So Goal Rush was really fun. That's team based, actually. So there's 2 teams of players in that. So like you have to also balance that.
Yeah. You mentioned Fall Guys. Did it give that kind of feel?
I mean, Monkey Ball always kind of has those same vibes as Fall Guys, right? But like the games themselves feel like they would not be out of place in a Fall Guys experience. I wouldn't say it's like the battle royale style, aside from the baboom,
Mm-hmm.
where it's the bomb tag, where because like people are literally being eliminated round over round, but it's much more fast paced than like Fall Guys is. And then the last one was a fun one as well called Robot Smash. And in this one, there's like just robots that spawn all over the arena. And this plays off of the momentum of Monkey Ball and also the spin dash mechanic, because basically you have to ram your Monkey Ball into these robots and try to just deal as much damage to them as possible and destroying them. And based on how hard you hit them, you get points, and those go to your team's overall total. And then whoever deals the most damage and destroys the most robots ends up being the winning team. So I had a blast with it, and I was unsure going into my demo. I was like, okay, yeah, whatever, I'll go play Monkey Ball. And I came out of that being like, okay, I'm gonna play Monkey Ball when this comes out, because it comes out exclusively on Switch June 25th, and you can read my full preview on GameInformer.com. So yeah, are you gonna check out Monkey Ball when it comes
Yeah,
out?
now I am. I'm hearing all kinds of amazing things. I definitely want to make sure that I destroy some people with bombs. Um, that's basically if a game has that, then we're set.
And yeah, like it almost does feel like this is definitely not an indie game, but I feel like it fits in that category of like it kind of has indie vibes.
Yeah. I wonder how much of this is taking inspiration from other things. It sounded like it's changed, like obviously had a lot of fun, and like the past games had these sorts of fun little mini games. So obviously there's some old school inspiration there, but I think indie games help resurgence of old school ideas, because a lot of developers are just making things that they really loved when they were kids or young adults, and so it brings up a revival so that you can have AAA games doing these things again, because they're proven by the more experimental titles.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm putting that on my wish list. There we go. We've
Yeah.
done it.
Look at this. I'm repaying the favor. You always come on here and add a bunch of games to my wish list, so I got to get one on your wish list. That's
Yep.
June 25th. Super Monkey Ball Banana Rumble coming exclusively to Switch.
Love it.
All right, Jill. You have played
Yep.
a recent indie game that came to Switch, and you've reviewed a recent indie game that came to Switch. Another Crab's Treasure. Tell me about this title.
Another Crab's Treasure has long been a kind of shining beacon in the indie scene. It's been on anticipation lists forever. It's been pushed back beyond dates that had been previously announced. It finally is coming out the 25th. It is officially out, but as we are recording, the review embargo has lifted. It is a mixed feeling that I enter this review for, because Another Crab's Treasure, for anyone who doesn't know, is sort of if you get like a Little Mermaid meets Dark Souls. So if you are like, again, don't know anything about it, it is a Souls-like game. It is crab-based. My cats are eating.
Your cats are going crazy.
Yep. It is a Souls-like game. It is a tough game. That might be belied by pictures that you see of it. That is bright and charming and cartoony, and the main character is a crab named Krill, who is fantastic. The premises are hilarious, but at the same time kind of poignant. You play as Krill. This kind of inciting incident is you are living happily in your little tide pool with your shell, and a literal and figurative loan shark comes in and takes away your home for lack of paying taxes. That should tell you a lot about the kinds of things we're dealing with.
Good for Krill. Fight the power.
Yeah. I mean, there is a lot of that. It gets surprisingly, for how silly and absurd that sounds. It dives into a lot of dealing with real life. Like, how are we living in this world that is so hard, that we are constantly fighting, that we are as seeing corporate greed all over the place and how did normal people just survive. It dives into like anger and rage that pops out of that, depression that pops out of that, um, how communities are affected by that, and how people blame poverty on the poor, and like it gets into sort of these really deep themes and things of the environment and how we're dealing with that as people. And so it goes surprisingly hard. Like for a game where you are a crab and you are wielding a fork and attacking denizens of the sea. um, I have had this game on my anticipation list for years. So it hit me really hard. For anybody who wants to go check out my review, you can go check it out. I gave it a 7.5. And that was a hard score for me to give it because I wanted this game so bad to be 10 out of 10. And for the first probably half of my playthrough, it took me about 19 hours to finish the game. I was afraid I was going to have to tell people I didn't like it at all. Like it was the creativity, the dialogue, the characters, the world building, worlds themselves, the landscape, absolutely fantastic. Love every single second of that. Where I get tripped up is kind of more technical things. The camera is a constant problem. Like it clips through geometry in really bad like sections where I'm trying to fight things. Like in a Souls game, you are constantly getting attacked by things, and like it's not forgiving. So you need to be precise and ready to attack, and it works a lot more. The combat works more like a Sekiro than like a Dark Souls. So a lot of that is precise timing for parries and trying to get up their like stance breaking mechanics and that sort of thing. So you need to be able to see what you're doing. And a lot of times like camera doesn't allow for that. You're falling through geometry, or your opponents are falling through geometry in a weird way. There are some things that just feel unnecessarily punishing. I hit a boss very early in the game that I was like, I don't know if this might break me, because they had a combination of poison, which, you know, if you get up to a certain level and you get poisoned, you know, your health is falling constantly. The poison also makes you move slower. So I'm moving slow. My health is constantly going down. The enemy is super fast. It's got like tank crushing blows. So I'm getting taken out in 1 or 2 hits maximum. I am getting thrown across the screen, which stuns you. You can't even like move yourself. You can't try to land in a good spot. So maybe you land in poison again. Like everything about this boss fight felt unfair in a way that I'm like, oh, I hate this. I hate that I feel this way. And like I like Souls games. I've played every Dark Souls. I've played every like Souls-like games are everything I really enjoy. I enjoy the challenge. Luckily, to go into finally like my upswing for this particular game, the developers have made one of the best assist modes I've ever seen in a game ever.
Oh, really?
And I don't feel bad about saying that I used it. Like I was 100% fine. You can go in and do things like lower the health of an enemy, or make sure you're not taking as much damage, or increasing the window for parrying. But my absolute favorite thing is you can literally give Krill a gun.
What?
Yes, you can
That's
give Krill
incredible.
a gun. It's giant. It's like if
Of
anybody
course
has
it is.
seen
Comically
Squirrel
large.
with a gun, it's comically large, and you just shoot people.
I love that.
So
By the way, real quick, that is something I didn't touch on in the monkey ball thing. Is there's also a lot of helper features in there as well. So like there's checkpoints that you can install throughout the level, and then there's also like ghost guides that will like show you the best path. But yeah, back to Another Crab's Treasure. I wanted to mention that while we were on that type of topic.
So for anyone for whom that is a particular frustration, the developers have been very clear, and I'm going to be very clear of like, don't try to go it until you crush your head against a wall. Like, use those. They're there for a reason. Enjoy. Once I got kind of past the beginning section, things started to clear up a little bit. Like, I did have unfortunate like technical problems where the game crashed and kicked me out of it. But as I got farther and farther into the game, it seemed to me like the fights got so much more balanced
That's
and
good.
less like less unfair and more like, okay, I see that this is challenging, but I see the opening, I see what my moves are going to be, and you start blossoming in the ways that you become stronger. And there is so much to leveling up and upgrading your person. You not only have like there's a skill tree that you can get pretty early on and start building up there. You have your shell, which is very integral in the kind of Sekiro like stance breaking, where you are using your shell to parry, to get them off balance so that they kind of capsize and you can like go in there and absolutely destroy them. Each shell has its own kind of lifespan and it slowly breaks down, but each shell also has its own special spell associated with it. So whichever shell you are using will have a different ability and will change the way that you are entering into a combat. You have the ability to later on like insure your shells so that you can like go into the bonfire like thing, which is the moon snail shell, and you will pop back out with your chosen shell. Like my favorite was a yogurt cup,
Okay.
because all your shells are various different trash pieces because the ocean is getting increasingly gunked up with all of junk.
Yeah.
And you are like, I really like the yogurt because its special ability was to continuously heal.
Oh
So
yeah, that'll help.
yeah. So I'm like, every time I can find something like that. But some things are like the soda can will have homing missiles that will go after enemies, or things like shell shock, which is a great name. Everything, the writing here is so good. The puns, grade A. Like in another league, get a chance. If you get the chance, read everything in the game because they're all hilarious puns. But shell shock will like infuse your shell with electricity, so anyone who touches you. So you have that. Then you have adaptations, which are your own personal sort of spells that you can start upgrading as well. Your fork, which is literally a fork. You can take pieces of uh, scrap metal in the form of something that we will recognize, but Krill does not know what that is. And you can take it to a blacksmith, which is hilarious, and he will upgrade your fork level so that you're getting more and more attack.
I believe they're called thingamabobs under the sea.
Yeah, thingamabobs under the sea. I apologize for not having that terminology ready. Um, and then attached to your shell, you can add little stowaways, which are things like starfishes will give you a little more vitality, or I have a sponge that allows me to regenerate my magic bar, which is
Oh
called
wow.
umami, by the way, and that's hilarious. I think also the core of the game and the most sparkling part of all of it is the characters you care about so much immediately, even though some things are very silly and they're all like little sea creatures that the design of which are so silly, and they are really undergoing a lot of real relatable problems. Their dialogue is great. You want them to succeed. Krill goes through a narrative arc where you're literally concerned for him and what he's experiencing, and you want him to succeed so badly, and things that go bad for him you feel bad about it. All of the different biomes, all the different levels, cleverly designed. You have really good shortcuts. You are they're very different, and they're so cool in the way that they use different items and different trash abilities, and the encounters are all very different, and like none of them are the same. They have cool inspirations, and the ending is a really good, satisfying ending to everything that happens. So I really love this game, and I just so wish, like, maybe in a few months I go back and find some of the technical stuff is polished up. But I am so sad that the lack of polish is what's keeping this from being a like indie gem of the year for me.
Yeah.
Um,
You know,
but I don't want people to miss out on it. It is a great game. It has a lot of fun for everybody to experience. It has something to say. There are moments that you're going to chuckle. There are moments where you're going to scream in like relatability. Um, so yeah, it is on, like, anyone who has Game Pass has absolutely no reason not to pick this up. It's
oh wow, it's on
fantastic.
Game Pass.
It
Okay.
is a Game Pass game day one, so you can go and pick that up. But it, of course, it's on Switch because we're talking about Nintendo
And it's
here.
on sale for until May 3rd. It's
Yeah.
normally $30. It's down to $27. So, modest 10% discount. Question for you, though, because we had Wesley LeBlanc review it at Game Informer.
hmm We
He was
texted.
he was very much in line with all of your criticisms and praises. The only thing that he mentioned that I don't think you did was, because you're underwater, the combat is a little bit floaty, which makes sense. But the way he saw it was it's not really conducive to like kind of the Souls like genre.
hmm
Did you feel that at all? I know he's a big Souls like player as well, but like did that irk you in any ways?
I don't know if floaty is exactly like, obviously you are in the ocean, so you do have some of those uh mechanics, but my cat is over here trying to get some attention. Hold up. Okay. um but I think for me what really was the problem was I felt a disconnect from when I hit a button to when it was
Mm,
uh
like represented
done.
on screen.
Yeah. And I'm like, even in Dark Souls, even in a polished Souls games like, Elden Ring, there are, because of the intensity of the battles, you are spamming that heal button. You're like, please, 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 just drink that Estus flask, please, please. And you get this as well here. But it does feel like sometimes there's just a disconnect between, like, I'm hitting this button, dodge, and I can't tell if that's because I previously was in the middle of a combo and I'm trying desperately to get out of that, and there is no like in-game like signal to stop doing that so that you can. There's also a really weird design choice where if you get hit when you're physically eating, it's a little kelp is your health. um, if you get hit in the middle of that, your kelp piece falls, so you no longer have that ability. You have to run up and go grab it again and then hit the thing, and I'm like,
Okay.
I hate that choice. uh so like if you're down to one last kelp piece and you so need that to heal and your enemy hits you and you need it even more, now you have to run after it to go grab it. So like
Oh,
it's stuff like that that's like, I wish this didn't exist. But I don't think, I think that with some tightening up it could be really quick and really smooth. And as you get into the later game and you get higher powered, you get cool abilities, like you can start to really like chain things together in a way that makes you feel powerful. And one of the things I really liked was I got an ability later in the game that was like electricity based, which
hmm.
would kind of like stun an enemy as well as doing damage. So it would give me the like second window I needed to get in there and start hitting things up, and I could, get my stowaways perfectly situated so that hitting them made more and more increased my magic. So like there are really good builds that you can get that flow and precision in, but yeah, there's just a slight disconnect that you don't want to have in these Souls games.
Mm.
But yeah, me and Wes actually texted about our reviews after they came out, and we're like, wow, we're twinsies.
Well, he gave it a 7 out of 10. You gave it a
I gave it a
7.5 out of
7.5.
10. So you can read both of those reviews on GameInformer.com and the Indie Informer, respectively. So available now on Switch as you are listening to this, but also every other major platform, including Xbox Game Pass, as Jill pointed out. I did not know that. So that's definitely a big plus in that regard.
Yeah.
All right, real quickly, I want to give my thoughts, and I'm going to try to keep it as spoiler free as possible on the newly released Knuckles Paramount Plus streaming show. So I like the 2020 Sonic movie, the first one. I really like Sonic 2. I thought that did a lot of really great stuff in terms of like taking the feedback that people had from the first one, which a lot of it was like, okay, this was maybe a little bit too silly. This was a little bit too focused on the human storyline. Like, we don't need that. And so what did they do in Sonic 2? They took the human characters and sent them on a Hawaiian vacation. And yes, there were some scenes with them that went on way too long and nobody cared. However, the bulk of the story was focused on Sonic, Knuckles, and Tails, and Dr. Robotnik, obviously. So that was a good step forward. And it made me hopeful for the Knuckles TV show. And unfortunately, they did not seem to learn any of the lessons of like, oh, they want the Sonic characters in the Sonic movies. They don't want the human characters for like the main storylines anyway. Like a little bit of the human characters are fine. Like I like James Marsden. I like Tika Sumpter. I like Adam Pally, who is for all intents and purposes, the main character of the Knuckles TV show, because Wade, who is kind of like the comic relief police officer in the first two movies, it should not be called Knuckles. It should be called Wade Whipple, because he is by far the most like important character in this show. So Knuckles basically goes on a mission to like find himself now that he's living on Earth with Sonic and Tails. And so you do get a little bit in the first episode, you get a little bit of Sonic, a little bit of Tails, like just like telling him, hey man, you should go like try to find yourself. And so we get a little bit extra Ben Schwartz and Colleen O'Shaughnessy in those roles. And Tika Sumpter is also has a scene, which are a couple scenes actually, which is it's good to see her pop back up, even though it's not the movies. So Knuckles goes on this journey, and Adam Pally, the actor playing Wade, joins him, and he's looking to like try to become a warrior. And so Knuckles like, oh, I'll train you. So there's a fun dynamic that could work there, but so much of like the emotional beats get laid at the feet of this character who is primarily comic relief in the movies. And that's not an impossible thing. We've seen that before where like, Ted Lasso is a perfect example of that, of like, okay, well, these characters are just like, they're there to deliver a joke and then go off screen, or maybe like be a foil to like one of the main characters and then they disappear. But then every once in a while they'll be like, let's do an episode focused on this character. And it's like, oh my God, I'm crying watching this because it's so good. It's not impossible to do, but every single character, save for Stockard Channing's character, the mom, feels like not even a caricature of a human being, but a caricature of a sitcom character. Like, it's so over the top, and like the actors I don't think are to blame. I think it's got to be a combination of the writing and just the direction in general, because like there are so many characters in there where they just don't feel believable, and as such it's hard to emotionally connect with them. And there are good scenes in there. Like, there are heartfelt moments that I do enjoy in this show, and the action scenes are actually pretty good. There's one in particular that has like a simulated single take within a fight scene, and it's really good. And like, when Knuckles is in the show, it's usually pretty good. And like, Idris Elba is fantastic in that role still. The problem is that like, they realized, I think, that animating CGI characters of that detail is expensive. So there were times where it's like, Knuckles, go do something else off camera. We're going to focus this on Wade this entire episode, and then maybe Knuckles will pop up at the end of the episode. but like don't do anything too involved. Like there are fight scenes where Knuckles is like heavily involved and like doing cool stuff, and like it looks on par with the movies. They did a great job with the CGI in this show. It's just that like they realized that like, oh, doing like 6 episodes starring a CGI character is expensive and it's tough. And I the way I framed it in my review is it's like video game adaptations at this point have an outdated reputation for being bad. Like it was the running gag for so long, right? Oh, it's a video game movie, it's going to be awful. I think that that is a very outdated way of thinking nowadays because we have things like Fallout, we have things like The Last of Us, we have the Mario movie, we have Sonic 2. All of those are good adaptations in different ways, right? Like The Last of Us is very beat by beat, like just retelling the story of The Last of Us. The Mario movie and Fallout are just like, hey, here are adventures in these worlds. We're going to like nod to a bunch of like game storylines and stuff like that, but like these are like individual stories. The Sonic movie takes it in such a weird way of like these are characters from these worlds, like different worlds, but they're on Earth and they're interacting with like humans on our planet, and it's like such a weird approach to doing a video game adaptation. And I think that they're eventually I would like to see them take the Sonic series back to like Sonic's world, and I think that would be where the more compelling stories happen. But as of now, like it's just like, all right, the fish out of water gag, we're getting it like over and over and over again. And that's what I was actually kind of most excited for, because Knuckles is very like straight laced, like, oh, I'm all about like the Echidna warrior code. And like he's very much like the straight man to like the comic relief of the character of Wade. And there's some fun times that they like play with that. But it more often than not just kind of hangs on the scenes for a little bit too long. And I don't think that's the actor's fault. They actually have some very good deliveries in there. But the point that I was going before I went off on that tangent was that this feels almost like a game adaptation from a bygone era where it's afraid to lean wholeheartedly into the source material. Like there are Easter eggs here and there, like, oh, look, the same way that like they're not in Green Hill Zone, they're in Green Hills, Montana. And it's like, okay, well, what's this? And it's like, oh, it's the ski lodge is called Ice Cap. And it's like, all right, yeah, I guess. Like that's but like when we're in a world where like the Mario movie exists, it's like that doesn't really do it for me anymore. Like in 2020, that would have done it for me. In 2024, not so much. And yeah, there's like some Easter eggs like throughout where it's like, okay, this is like a fun nod to Knuckles' history in the games, or this is a fun nod to this zone in Sonic 3. But like it's just and it by the end of it, it devolves so much into like we don't even care about Knuckles at this point because we're so focused on this family drama that exists in Wade's family that like that I ended up never really like caring all that much about, because again the characters just aren't believable in large swaths. Again, like Stockard Channing's character was awesome. Wade I liked, I guess, more than the other ones, but like the sister and the father, like they just felt so unbelievable as characters that it was hard to really get invested in them. And then like that's where like the emotional stakes were, and it just didn't ever click with me. And then meanwhile I'm just like, what's Knuckles up to? Where's that guy, the guy that the show is named after, the guy that we're tuning in to see?
Mhm.
And it's like, oh, he's literally sitting at a bar watching TV. And it's like, why is he doing this? Why can't we just have a show where Knuckles is like doing cool stuff? And the answer is probably budgetary, but it's I was underwhelmed. I think that it felt inessential. If you're wondering if you need to watch the Knuckles show in order to see Sonic 3, with the disclaimer that I have not seen Sonic 3, because I mean, who knows? Maybe Wade is suddenly the main character of Sonic 3 as well, or like Knuckles, something that happens in this show is going to be like come into play the way that like, stuff that happened in Ant-Man and the Wasp came into play in Avengers Endgame. Uh, Maybe that's going to be the case with Sonic the Hedgehog 3, but I would right now I think that Knuckles feels underwhelming and entirely inessential in terms of like viewing. Like I think that the two people that are the two demographics that should watch this are like kids who have enjoyed the Sonic movies to this point, and just like the most diehard of Sonic fans. Like even I struggled to get through it, even though like the shows, like the episodes are short. Like there's 6 episodes. They all dropped at once on Amazon, or not Amazon. I'm sorry. God, Paramount's gonna be upset about that. On Paramount Plus. I was so used to talking about Fallout that I mentioned Amazon. On
Mhm.
Paramount Plus, they all dropped at once, and they're like anywhere from like 23 minutes to like 32 minutes. So like they're quick, they're breezy. There's a lot of needle drops. So like if you are not a fan of like the licensed music being used in these movies, like, you know, a lot of people, especially Kyle Hilliard at Game Informer, not a fan of having the licensed music in the Mario games or the Mario movie. But and also the Sonic series has had that as well. But like there's a lot of that in the Knuckles show. um and some of them are good, but like there's a lot of that. But I don't think that there's any reason that you have to watch this before you see Sonic 3. It almost, it, going back to the sitcom comparison, it almost felt like, okay, we started at this place and now we're like almost back to where we started at the by the end of it all. And yeah, I wish it was something that I could be like, oh yeah, this is amazing. Like Knuckles is one of my favorite characters in the Sonic universe, so I was excited to see that. um but yeah, outside of like those few positives, I don't know that there's a whole lot of reason to check this out. But if you do want to check it out, it's available now on Paramount Plus. And then as a reminder, Sonic the Hedgehog 3 comes to theaters on December 20th. But yeah, I don't know if you are itching to check it out now that I've given that review, but any interest in this show?
Um, you know, you didn't paint a great picture of it. I might not. I am very interested in the pattern of people who are getting into these franchises and video game IPs because video games are so big and they're starting to hear about video games, and then just not trusting the IP to see things through. It's like, oh no, we don't want to make the I mean, it's so great the way you said that the title of the show is Knuckles and you are seeing Knuckles just like sitting at a bar watching TV. So it's like, oh, we can't trust that people care enough about Knuckles, even though that's the name of the show. We want to make
Mhm.
sure that a human is the person who's really involved or what that we care about. I don't understand those particular. It just reeks to me of um, perhaps not fully understanding their audience or where these adaptations can go and
Well,
what.
I made this point on the Game Informer show. I'm currently doing an X-Men rewatch in the lead up to Deadpool and Wolverine because I'm so excited for that. And it
Yeah.
looks like there's going to be a million nods and Easter eggs from the X-Men movies. So I'm currently rewatching all the X-Men movies. And something that struck me is there was a lot of parallels between the Knuckles series and like kind of maybe the Sonic series as a whole and those early X-Men movies, which you may remember, like those were like the first X-Men movie predates the first Sam Raimi Spider-Man movie.
Yep. Hmm.
So that was like kind of like the start of the modern superhero movie. Like I mean, a Blade came out before then as well, but like I feel like X-Men was really like kicking in the door and like ushering in this new era of superhero movies. But because of that, like, and you even see this in like the early MCU movies, where it's like, you know, Iron Man. As much as I love that first Iron Man movie, there are some like awkward moments and growing pains as they're trying to figure out how to make this genre work, and they obviously figured it out very well. Look at look at the MCU's success over the years.
Hmm.
But the X-Men movies, like they're very early on, they almost feel ashamed of the source material at times,
Hmm.
where it's like, you know, the famous line of Wolverine when he's like wearing like the black jumpsuit and he's like, "Oh, this is what you guys wear?" And he's
Yeah.
like, "Would you prefer yellow spandex?" Like as a joke of like, "Oh, well, that outfit in the comic is ridiculous. Let's make fun of it." And it's like, it almost felt like they were afraid to lean too hard into the nerdy stuff. And that's almost, I mean, they're not afraid to lean into it, but they're almost like afraid to lean into the source material too
Yeah.
much with this particularly the Knuckles show, but like by having the Sonic movies take place on Earth, like with humans as like the anchors, it almost feels like that way. And as such, like look at again another comparison I made on the Game Informer show, like once the MCU was off to the races, like we had Iron Man, and it was great. We had the first Thor movie, we had Captain America, we had Iron Man 2. They were really starting to hit their strides. And then we had the Avengers, and it was like, wow, this is a game changer. And that's
Mhm.
almost how I'm likening like The Last of Us, and I'm likening like Fallout and the Mario movie. But then you look over at Sony and they're like, Amazing Spider-Man 2. Let's do that. Like, yeah, let's just make our own thing that's not connected to the MCU. And like, it just felt outdated
Mhm.
by then because they were still using like the old conventions that
Yeah.
existed before Marvel Revolution, or the Marvel Studios side of the MCU side revolutionized the best practices for doing it. So ultimately, that's kind of how Knuckles feels. It feels like we've learned how to do these adaptations better as like an industry, and yet you're still kind of relying on these like human storylines that I thought that we learned that Sonic 2 was like the test case of like, okay, yeah, send the humans off to do other things and then let the main characters that people are in the theaters to see do their stuff. So I don't know, that's just kind of like the comparison, that it's just interesting as I'm rewatching the X-Men movies and being like, huh, there's some similarities here, but 20 plus years later.
Yeah.
So, like I said, out now on Paramount Plus. Again, not an outright bad movie, just one that feels a little antiquated and maybe misleading by the title. But Jill, before we wrap up, this has been a very long episode, but I
Yeah, it
feel like
is.
I would be remiss not to get an eShop gem of the week from the master of indies, Jill Grodt. Jill, your taste in indies is renowned the world over. So if you
Oh,
wouldn't
good.
mind, share with us a quick eShop gem of the week before we get out of here.
So my eShop gem of the week is thematic. I have chosen Going Under, which is perhaps the first, if not the first, one of the first of Aggro Crab's games, and
Oh, interesting.
it is a really fun, bubbly, um, beat 'em up roguelike dungeon crawler type game. Absolutely, again, kind of the same idea of very silly premise. You are an intern who goes to work at Fizzle, which you will see references to in Another Crab's Treasure.
Oh,
Um,
building out a universe.
yeah, and part of your job becomes going to clear out dungeons and of other businesses that have gone under. Um, and it is a great commentary on tech startups and that sort of world and internships and like all of that kind of culture. Like a lot of really cool commentary on social things that are happening while being very silly, while having this really fun combat, which is not supposed to be in any way precise. You're picking up like staplers and things as you go along and just ridiculous things. It is a little less uh, put together, probably, as far as gameplay, and they've definitely learned some things in Another Crab's Treasure, but it's a game that doesn't get enough love and people need to go check it out. And it is also on sale, so
It
this is
is. I just saw that.
literally the best time to get it. It's 75% off, so it's only $5
Yeah,
right now.
normally $20. It's on sale until May 1st. So you have a little bit of time, but don't dilly-dally too much. And it came to Switch in 2020. So I might have to check that out. But you're saying that the combat isn't quite as put together, has me hesitating a little bit.
Um the game itself is not as put together. It's not
Okay.
quite as well designed. The combat is meant to be less precise. So it's totally fine. That like I don't have the same issues with it being imprecise because it's not a Souls like. Um, and you are just picking up like cactuses and tossing them at joblins.
Joblins. Okay. I see what we're
And I
doing
have a
here.
little uh, plushie of the main character sitting behind me for anybody
Oh, that's who
who
that is. Okay.
so yeah, and it's the little blurb that they have here is as an unpaid intern in the dystopian city of Neo Cascadia, you wield office junk as weaponry as you make your way through offbeat procedural dungeons beneath your company campus. And it is that silly, and I really, really love this game. It didn't get enough love when it first came out, so I hope people go back and check it out.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing that, and thank you for joining me for this extended edition of All Things Nintendo. And thank you so much to everyone for listening. Do me a favor, if you haven't already, throw All Things Nintendo a 5-star review and hit that subscribe button. If you want to get any questions, comments, or topic suggestions in, you can get in touch with me, Brian at allthingsnintendo.com, or hit me up on social media at Brian P. Shea, or leave a comment on the free All Things Nintendo Patreon page. You can also join the Game Informer community Discord, which is a perk for subscribing to our Twitch channel, even just for 1 month. And a reminder that we have that standalone Game Informer print subscription that if you live in the United States, you can get issues shipped straight to your mailbox for less than $20 before tax. Jill, tell everyone where they can find you on the internet.
You can check out all my work at theindianformer.com. That's the best place to check everything out. You can find me on social media as me personally for Twitter at Finruin, Finruin. But you can follow the show at indie_informer. Unfortunately, couldn't get the whole thing in. But you can also check out my podcast I do with a bunch of other kind of indie voices in the space called the Indie Council, and we come together every week to talk about what is going on in the indie space and our thoughts, and we generally devolve into mischief and have a great time. So please go check that out as well.
As you can tell, Jill knows her stuff when it comes to indie games, so if this episode piqued your interest, then absolutely check out that podcast. Lots of other gems to uncover through that show. But that is our show for this week. Thank you again for listening. Take care. We'll see you next time.